Hi there. We talked today in class about frequency tables and histograms, and so I've selected two problems from your homework assignment tonight to demonstrate what we discussed in class. These correspond to the notes that are on my website. So first we've got number 1 and then number 3. Okay. Number 1, we are asked on the worksheet to use the data given to make a frequency table. And so number 1, we were given runs per game and then a series of data values, right? 5 runs per game, 4 runs per game, etc. Okay. So a frequency table consists of 2 columns here. The first one is going to be made up of intervals representing my runs per game. And the second one is going to be the frequency, or the number of times our data falls inside that interval. Right? Go ahead and put runs here. Okay. And so when I'm establishing my intervals, I need to make sure that I cover the span or the range of the data. Range is something we're going to talk about in the next lesson. But we need to make sure that we cover the range of the data, right? That we start at least at the smallest number and then we go at least through the biggest number. In frequency tables, you might go a little bit outside of those bounds, potentially if it makes your intervals more friendly. But probably not too far out, right? If our smallest number is 12, we aren't going to start at 0 typically. But we might start at 10 instead of at 12. Right, and so that's something we're going to decide here. And so when I look at my data, I need to first figure out, well, what is that smallest and largest number? Because I need to make sure I've covered them. Right, my smallest in this case is 0, and my largest is 9. And so I need to somehow get from 0 to 9, and I need to do so using equal intervals, right? Meaning that I can't go from 0 to 1, which covers 2 numbers, 0 and 1, and then have the next interval go 2 to 5. Because 2 to 5 covers 4 numbers, 2, 3, 4, and 5, as opposed to just the 2 numbers of 0 to 1. So I need to make sure my intervals are equal here. Right, so since 0 is a pretty nice number to start with, I'm going to go ahead and start at 0, and then I am going to go 0 to 1 in this particular case. Right, 2 numbers. Which means my next interval is going to be 2 to 3. Again, an equal interval. The first interval has 2 numbers in it, with the in-between decimals, of course, if we had decimals. And then the second one has 2 numbers in it. And we're going to keep going, 4 to 5, until we hit 9, until we have 9 in one of our intervals here. So we have 6 to 7 and 8 to 9. And there we go, we've hit 9. So we could stop there. Okay. The frequency column then is how many data values do I have that are in each of these intervals. So 0 to 1, how many of these numbers, how many of these data values are 0s or 1s, or if there had been decimals, lie between 0 and 1. Right? In this case, there aren't any decimals, so we're really just concerned with the integer values. How many 0s and 1s do I have? Okay, and so as I go through this list, I have 1, 0 or 1, 2, 0 or 1s, and 3. And so my frequency of that interval is 3. And you're going to repeat that process then. 2 to 3, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 to 5 then, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 to 7, I have 1, 2, 3. And 8 to 9, I have 1. Okay. And then it's a good way of double checking. Make sure that you haven't missed something. You could do that either by crossing off like I have, or as soon as you finish, count up how many you have. So we have 7, 14, 15 numbers here. And then make sure that there are 15 in your list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That way you make sure you haven't left off a number or left off a data value or accidentally included one twice, potentially. Okay? And that's a frequency table. Okay, number 3, sliding up here. Number 3, we were asked to use the data to make a histogram. Okay, and so to make our histogram, we're going to start with first making our frequency table. Okay. So I've got here my 2 columns. We have a number of pages, and we have frequency. Okay. Okay, so same thing like we did above, we need to figure out, okay, what's my smallest and what's my largest. I'm just going to out one here to make sure I get all my numbers in there. Okay. So in this case, as we're looking through this, we see that our largest number is that 514. We have nothing larger than 514 in this particular one. And our smallest number is here at 311. We have nothing smaller than 311. And so as I'm building my integrals, I need to make sure that I go from at least 311 through at least 514. And that's a pretty large span, right? That's 203 of a difference here. So I'm probably not going to be counting by 2s like I did on my prior intervals. I'm going to go ahead and choose on this one. I'm going to count by 25s. You also could potentially count by 50s, right? Okay, but I'm going to count by 25s. And so I'm going to have here 301 to 325, 326 to 350, 351 to 375, 376 to 400, 401 to 425, 426 to 450, 451 to 475, and 2 more. We have 476 to 500, and 501 to 525. Okay. And then again, we're going to count up how many there are. Between 301 and 325, we have 1 in that interval. Okay. Between 326 and 350, as you look through these numbers here, okay, none of these data values fall inside that interval, and so I have 0 inside that interval. Between 351 and 375, I have 1, 2, 3, oh, and that's it, because that one's actually outside, sorry. And then between 376 and 400, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Between 401 and 425, we have 1 and 2. Between 426 and 450, we have 1. Between 451 and 475, we have 1. Between 476 and 500, as you look through these here, none of these lie between 476 and 500, so 0. And we have 1 in that last interval here. And again, if you had counted by 50s, you'd have fewer intervals. These numbers would potentially be a little bit different. Okay? But here's what a histogram looks like then. A histogram is essentially a bar graph with no spaces in between them. Right? Down on the bottom here, we're going to go ahead and put our intervals. And on the side, we're going to put our frequency. Okay? And my highest frequency here is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So we have 301 to 325. 326 to 350. I'm just writing my intervals here along the bottom. 351 to 375. 376 to 400. 401 to 425. 426 to 450. 451 to to 475, 2 more, 476 to 500, and last one here we have 501 to 525. Okay, and then we're going to create our bar graph. In this first interval here, 301 to 325, that happened 1 time. So I'm going to have a bar here at 1. Okay, 326 to 350 happened 0 times. 351 to 375 happened 3 times. 4 times for the next interval. 2 times for the interval after that. And then 1 time, 1 time, 0 times, and 1 time. Alright, so we're just putting for our bars here these frequencies. And there's our histogram.